My name's Nathan Gibbons. I'm a 57-year-old artist from Bracknell. I got married and moved down to Portland. I was down there for about 2 years, so I kind of worked the whole Jurassic Coast really. Eventually I started earning a living working the south coast of England, doing all the seaside resorts, painting seascapes, landscapes, things like that for the tourists. It's a real tough trade trying to sell something to a tourist for £60–70 when they just want to go and have an ice cream and a cup of tea. The ballet painting, so many times I've been tempted to go back and change the background, or just put something very lightly into the background. There's always something more that I want to do to it. It's one of the first oil paintings I ever did, and I really just wanted to get the lady laid in. For me, it was an exercise in figures, in painting figures and learning how to light figures in oil colour. I always say to people, when people say to me, what's the most important piece of advice you'd give to someone as an artist, I always say it's observation, it's looking. You can't paint something if you don't understand what it is that you're painting. So, for instance, if you're painting a tiger, you need to know what a tiger is. You need to understand how fur lies on a tiger, how their eyes work, how the light reflects from their eyes, how whiskers appear on a tiger. Otherwise you end up with a caricature of a tiger rather than something that looks like a tiger. Really, you need to understand what's underneath the skin as well as what's on top of it. They're nothing more than a collection of random shapes that come from the mind. So we would start with a canvas, select a colour. We usually restrict the colour palette to 2 or 3 colours. And then we would lay down a base layer of colour with something like a rag really quickly. Have to work very quickly. And then we just start laying in, I suppose, random shapes and areas, and then seeing what those shapes and areas remind us of, and then refine those shapes and areas until they become buildings. If you take a very close look at that, it's nothing more than triangles and squares and circles in a random order. And then the closer you come to the front, then the more, I suppose, the more defined they become. The shark took me about 9 days. Well, I went to visit my brother-in-law in Australia a few years ago, and while we were there, he likes to paint, and so I did some oil painting with him, and I painted a shark for him, and I loved it. And I came home, and then I suppose last year I thought I'd start painting one for myself, so I started painting this one for myself. This one I had to go down to use aerosol paints and an airbrush on this one, whereas with oil paints I could have just blended it by hand, and it would have felt, it's hard to explain. Oh crikey, how to explain it? Painting has a feeling, and it would have just felt much better. The emotion of what I was painting would be in the painting more than this. This just seems too cold. It doesn't have enough of me in it. I guess it's down to taste, art in general. It's like Banksy, like him or hate him, I guess, isn't it? I mean, some people would be prepared to pay millions for a Banksy. Some people would be prepared to pay more money for a Banksy that's been through a shredding machine. I personally wouldn't. I think there are much more talented artists out there that you can buy a piece of work that you're going to enjoy much more for a fraction of the price. You shouldn't always pay for art, I guess. I mean, it cost me nothing to do a small canvas, and it makes people's day when they find a piece of art and they've had a really crap day and they find something that makes them smile and they take it home and it makes them smile time and time again, then it's worth more than money. Abstraction is about a feeling. I generally start with a title or a concept. I always use a limited palette. I just prefer working that way because the colours that you do use stand out more. Sometimes they're music based. It's hard to explain. I tend to see abstracts as music, almost like musical notes. It's hard to, and the more you work on an abstract, the more prominent that music becomes in your head, and as you work, that kind of, it's almost like a poetry within what you're doing, and it develops over the time that you're working on the painting. but we have a very destructive side. Part of our condition is almost self-destruction, I guess. And if I look at painting and there's not at least a hint of that in there, then to me it's not got that part of me in it. Would I give up my bipolar disorder with all the problems it gives me in life? Probably not. I'd like to pop down to the coast for the odd day and just put a canvas out and paint plein air and just do the odd seascape for a giggle.